congratulations on what happened last night with Ricky Rosello's announcement that he would finally resign after 12 days of straight protesting.
Actually, to be more precise, 14.
14 days
yes,
of straight protesting.
Most newspapers and media say 12 days, but really there were a group of activists that began to mobilize since the first leaking of the chat 2 days before. But definitely the more massive protests and started 12 days ago. Yes.
Okay. Okay, but so 14 days of straight protesting, and shortly before midnight, he announces that he will be resigning. What was it like to receive that news? What were the streets like last night? I imagine you're both sleep deprived. How was it? Just give us a sort of sense of what the streets felt like.
Well, yesterday night it was Juanqui's birthday. We were celebrating. We were, and now every meeting with friends is a political meeting because everyone's like worried about or pumped about what we're gonna do afterwards, or ideas of where we could go. So by the time it was like 10 or 11, I went home thinking it wasn't gonna happen. So I was at home and suddenly I hear honking of cars. I said, shit. I turned on my phone and I said, okay, he did it. I started watching the announcement, and I got with my got on the car with my compañera, my partner, and then we went straight to Old San Juan. We were in a traffic jam of people honking their cars with the Puerto Rican flags all over, people running through the streets. There's the feeling that people got used to, like, the streets are ours and people are taking to the streets, like in main highways, people walking in the middle of main highways as if it was normal, because we've had nonstop protesting for 2 weeks. So, and then I got to Old San Juan, people were singing, chanting, everyone was hugging and saying congratulations. Everyone were congratulating everybody. It was a very festive and a feeling of true accomplishment. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. We got home like at 4 a.m.
You know something. Yesterday was a very strange day because the night before, the news had announced that the governor was going to resign, and he was going to leave a message, give a message to the people before noon of the next day, meaning yesterday.
Yeah.
And these were not just rumors, but the main newspapers began to send this out. Even NBC, I think, or one of the big news places in the U.S. also began to say this. So everyone was expecting the governor to renounce. That's the
Resign.
To resign. Perdóname. To resign early in the morning before noon. So we were agonizing.
And there was a press conference convened at 11. So exactly. The news outlets were physically there waiting for the announcement.
So imagine, I mean, some news even said that the governor had left the country the night before, and he had recorded the message, and that he was already in a plane leaving Puerto Rico. So everyone was like, okay, well, when is this gonna happen? So yesterday, everyone was agonizing through all the day. I mean, international news people came and were here waiting. And I mean, it was really a very strange day, and people were already like pissed because we thought this is another example of
cogernos de pendejo.
Cogernos de pendejo. You know, this is horrible, and this is, and we're gonna be more mad now, and tomorrow we're gonna fight this even stronger.
And actually, they knew that was probably the effect, because they tripled the amount of ¿cómo
guards,
se dice? The
fuerza de choque, la fuerza de choque.
The riot. They tripled the riot police in Old San Juan, because they thought, okay, if this guy does not announce, there's gonna be a huge riot.
Yeah.
So anyway, everyone yesterday was trying to watch the news, and finally, it was just before midnight that the governor then decided to resign. And once that happened, around 11:55 or something like that p.m., you could hear it was like a permanent echo of sounds, voices, screams. The city was alive. I mean, the city was alive, and the people were, as Bernat says, in the street. People were throwing fireworks, fuegos artificiales, fireworks, and something very curious. This coincided with a perreo militante, a perreo combativo. Yesterday, I mean, the creativity of the protest has been such amazing that yesterday, in front of the Fortaleza, which is the house of the governor,
and in front of the cathedral,
was called a national perreo combativo. So, I mean, the party was amazing. And then night was when the governor announced. So it was like a carnival, you know. It was amazing.
All for your birthday, Juanqui. Wow. Oh, that's incredible.
July 24, 25 of July is gonna be remembered, definitely. I mean, 25 of July is a very important date for us anyway, because of the US invention, and also the Estado Libre Asociado Foundation, beginning in 1952, and also the assassination of two independent militants, young guys that were killed in El Cerro Maravilla, which is in the mountains of Puerto Rico. They were, ¿cómo se dice? Well, set up by the police and killed. And that was used as propaganda for...
What was the year? It was in the
1978, 79. 78, 79. We have to recheck, but it's 78, 79. And so anyway, it's very interesting that this happened on the 24th, towards the 25, right? So it gives another layer of symbolic and political meaning to the struggle in Puerto Rico, and I think that's one of the things that are not necessarily planned, but that happened, and it's fascinating. 1978.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So, okay, entonces, en unos minutos vamos a entrar en, bueno, cuáles son los próximos pasos, pero antes de eso, empecemos con las causas, las motivaciones. Entonces, la pregunta es, bueno, los medios de comunicación les ha costado bastante, en Estados Unidos por lo menos, explicar las causas, explicar por qué en este momento surgieron estas protestas y explicarlo de una forma, pues, o sea, explicándolo con historia, con contexto político. La pregunta es, what are the different elements motivating different kinds of people to protest? O sea, what brought people out of their homes and into the streets for 14 days?
Right. Should I begin?
You're going to go through the anti-chat or the...
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Obviously, there are many answers to this question, right? And I think that we will have to continue answering that question, because it's not an answer that is that we have to continue answering that question, right? But definitely, the chat that came out, and everyone, after that, everyone like went to the streets, really synthesized a lot of the violence and the structural violence that the Puerto Ricans have experienced at least since 2006. At least, I say at least because we can go back to 1898, and before that we can go back to many other moments in our history. But we have, since 2006, we have experienced an economic depression in Puerto Rico. And since 2006, that economic depression has been obviously has deepened with the economic crash in the United States and then in the world, and that also affected incredibly the socioeconomic situation in Puerto Rico. We have had an demographic hemorrhage in Puerto Rico. We've been, Puerto Rico has been expulsed from the island archipelago by the hundreds of thousands. Actually, next year, we're gonna begin the census, the demographic census, right? The population census in Puerto Rico and in the United States is every 10 years. I would not be surprised if we have less than 3 million people at this moment. And, by last decade, we were 3.8 million. So we're talking about a lot of people living the island archipelago because of socioeconomic conditions. On top of that, so you have the fiscal crisis, and you have the economic crisis, and then you have the fiscal crisis, and obviously, as you know, the Promesa law that force us to have a junta de control fiscal, which that would be how do you translate that into English? La Junta de Supervisión Fiscal, the control board.
The right? Fiscal control board.
The fiscal
oversight
board, right. So you have this
that's a distinction that's noteworthy, that the official name is the Fiscal Oversight Board, but everyone in Puerto Rico calls it the Fiscal Control Board. Right. So if you ask people, es la Junta de Control Fiscal. Okay. But the official name is la Junta de Supervisión Fiscal.
Right.
Okay, gracias.
So basically, this is a board that is imposed by Congress, right? Mm-hmm. And it has 7 members that are not elected by anyone, and obviously they also it's like we have our own IMF, but just for Puerto Rico through Congress. It's basically IMF structural transformation programs that obviously with a neoliberal caramba, se me está olvidando el español, el inglés,
with a neoliberal agenda
yeah. So you have that. No. And then on top of that, you have 2 hurricanes, right? Hurricane Irma and Maria, and incredible corruption in the 2 parties that have ruled Puerto Rico since the last 70 years, 60 something years, right? So you have all these variables working out. If you have all that, then you have to realize that we have been, first of all, the amount of young people that have participated in this protest is just amazing.
Like teenagers.
Exactly. We're not talking about, the people
young
saying
adults,
millennials. No, we're talking about 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. And also, obviously, in the 20s and whatnot. But I mean, these are adolescents. These are folks that were born and grew up in a place where they see no future for themselves, and where their parents have had to work 2 and 3 jobs in order for them to have education, food in the table, and a roof on top of them. And some of them right now, don't even have a roof because they still have blue tarps, or they lost their homes in the hurricane. And now
living with relatives or
exactly. El modo de vivir de los puertorriqueños y las puertorriqueñas en esta última década y media realmente se ha transformado. And for those people growing up in Puerto Rico, hay otra conciencia realmente que se está desarrollando y que ahora, obviamente, aún los que estamos trabajando en organizaciones, que militamos en organizaciones políticas progresistas o de izquierda, aún los que hacen trabajo o hacemos trabajo comunitario de diferentes índoles, ha sido muy revelador. Quien te diga que sabe lo que está pasando te está mintiendo. Quien te diga que alguien está liderando este proceso, que hay una organización liderándolo, también te está mintiendo. O sea, realmente estamos tratando de entender a la misma vez que participamos de todo lo que podemos. So, I mean, you have that aspect of the whole issue, right? Second, you have communications.
Okay.
I think it's crucial. I mean, it was a shot, but also it is true that many people are suffering in terms of in economic terms, but most people have access to cellular phones, right? And they are informed in their own way, and they have their own mechanisms of communicating and whatnot. So I think obviously that is a very important aspect of the mobilization.
Just in terms of meme production, the amount of political memes that have been produced.
Oh, los memes, increíble.
Absurd. It's
It's amazing. And then you have, and this is also true. Perhaps, I mean, all countries are like that, but I think Puerto Rico, especially because of our lack of international representation, our representatives are our artists, our musicians, the people that are influencers in the media. I mean, those people have an even bigger symbolic capital than maybe in other societies. I don't know. I mean, but here there is very strong. So when you have influencers, popular influencers, I'm not even talking about very famous people like Ricky Martin, which were very involved as well, but people like Ray Charlie, a person that all of a sudden became a leader of Los Barrios in an incredible way. I mean, this is a guy that
he's the guy who mobilized the motorcycles. Did you see the
thousands
of motorcycles
from working class
from the projects,
barrios, from the residential projects? I mean, I'm talking about thousands of motorcycles in the night, like going to old San Juan.
Like 4,000 motorcycles.
In order to.
It was like a medieval cavalry.
No.
That's what I saw. When I saw the image, I said, "Holy shit, we have a cavalry." And one of the days, I think it was last Wednesday, when they started throwing gases. We were having a political meeting in a plaza, not where the gases were, but a bit farther away. And we saw when people came running, like in the direction against the gases, running away from the gases.
Mm-hmm.
Or, oh shit, they started. They're running away, and suddenly like 50 motorcycles came in the direction of the gases, and we felt like, yeah! So it was an amazing feeling of, okay, these people got our backs.
Yeah.
It was a really popular. This was a popular rebellion. I mean, this was a popular rebellion. Obviously, in a very creative, democratic way, because there was not one death. Although the police did shoot not, well, I don't know if real bullets, but definitely rubber bullets. A lot of them. I mean, people were injured, but there were not one death that I know, and it hasn't been recorded. Wow, yo no sé, te he dicho muchas cosas, pero maybe I haven't answered the question yet.
I wanted to add something regarding the context.
Yeah.
In 2009, under Luis Fortuño, Governor Luis Fortuño, the Law 7
bien importante, la ley 7, sí.
was the beginning of the first really hard blow to the working class. It was a law that permitted, under the exceptional estado de emergencia, they declared a fiscal emergency state, which permitted them to fire a lot of career government employees that had job security until that day.
Thousands of employers.
And we're talking about 35,000 families suddenly, and some of those families, both parents were government employees. So suddenly you had like 30,000 unemployed families, and that started like a huge migration.
Yeah.
And the roughness of the inability to pay rent, to have enough to pay for the utilities. There was a spike in an increasing spike in utilities costs, in particular the electricity. So that was a context before Promesa.
Exactamente.
So when you get Promesa, it's like, oh, come on. They started the austerity measures, included pensions, included healthcare plans, included the budget of the university that got chopped in half.
The closing of schools.
The announcement of a $4.25 minimum wage. So that's when Juanqui says that these kids were born in a country with no future. It's in a literal sense.
Yeah.
They're not going to have free education or accessible education and good education, which what the UPR provides. They were not going to have good paying jobs. It was being engineered to be a service society, like tourism, or like to service all the other millionaires and tax exemptions that were being brought in, with Law 20 and 22.
Exactly.
There is a millionaire incentive, so the millionaires come and establish their businesses here, and as long as they create at least 2 jobs and live here for 6 months, they have.
It becomes a fiscal paradise for them.
Law 20 and 22 were both okay. And those were passed after.
Maybe 2 years ago,
Fortuño, ¿no?
Under
Fortuño. Under Fortuño, I think. Y si no, Alejandro García Padilla. Actually, maybe 5 years ago or 6.
I'm checking it out.
Yeah, we have to check.
So that's part of that context.
And these people
of
are
impoverishment and of more than being poor, because you go 4 generations ago and people were poor, but there was upward social mobility through education, etc. This is a generation who knows that they're going to be worse off than their parents.
Yeah.
That they have seen their parents impoverished and losing whatever working conditions they had, whatever job security they had.
Right.
So that's the kids who are on the streets.
Right. And he mentioned Law 2022 is very important because also people start to see, I mean, all these billionaires moving to Puerto Rico, mostly white Americans from the US.
2012.
2012, yeah.
Right.
So wow, 7 years already.
Yeah.
And they're buying a lot of land, a lot of properties, and they start gentrifying working class neighborhoods and transforming them into Airbnbs, like a tourist economy and service economy, just as Bernat said. On top of that, we have to add that at least since the late 1990s, after the Telefonica strike in 1997, 1998, los sindicatos, unions have been really fragmented and demobilized. Have lost a lot of power, and like in many other places where they have really been attacked by neoliberal policies, right? So the unions were were not like this big organizing space for the majorities. Now, this is not to say that there are some unions that are still militant and have been active in this process, like La Utier. They have been involved and they have contributed especially in their knowledge of logistics with massive with a lot of people. How do you deal with so many people when you have to at least march or do something so that and bring the big, ¿cómo es que se? Platforms, las plataformas con bocinas, los recursos, resources, right?
Yeah.
And their offices so that different movements meet.
Could have meetings.
Could have meetings and really reflect about what is happening and trying to organize events. But really, again, this has been a popular movement, a revolt, insurgencia, emergencia, all of the above.
I want to add, in answering the question, what was the breaking point?
Yeah.
Because of all that context, I think it was the straw that broke the camel's back in the sense that people are so used to corruption that you can hear people during elections when you argue, hey, how are you going to vote for those people who are the party who have been, some of them have been arrested for corruption, and people say, well, they steal, but at least they do things, they spread around the theft. Yeah. But I think the chat, what it revealed is that not only are they corrupt, but they are morally corrupt. It was, I think there was a lot of moral outcry in the sense of it was against the dignity of Puerto Ricans. When they say things like, cogemos de pendejo hasta los nuestros, we fool even our own. And fool, of course, does not capture the strength of the word pendejo, but yeah. So that one, when people said, when they said, oh, I see the future for Puerto Rico, and it's beautiful. It has no Puerto Ricans. That was part of the chat. So the beauty of the chat was that it offended everyone. There was misogyny. There was violence against women. There was violence against obesity. There was homophobia. There was against the dead, and I think that part also. I think that went right into the heart of Puerto Ricans. Like, you don't fuck with our dead. Like the ancestors.
Yeah.
So that was people who had to bury their own dead during Maria. Who have been silent because they say, well, the whole country was under strain. It was a disaster, but they carried that hurt, and suddenly they heard that, and this is too much. We have to take these guys out. Yeah.
I think when this becomes an article, I'll just title it "You Don't Fuck with Our Dead," because yeah. Okay, so to some degree, you would agree that this was a scenario, to some degree, of the last straw on the camel's back.
Yeah.
Okay, or like a tipping point.
The straw that broke the camel's back.
Straw that broke the camel's back. Okay, that said, and this is just the last little question for this point. That said, there have been a lot of outrageous moments recently in Puerto Rican politics. My question is, and maybe it's very difficult to answer this, but maybe you already did answer it by explaining that this just offended everyone. But what do you think were the elements, maybe organization-wise, that led to the sustained protesting? Like, there's been a lot of protesting in Puerto Rico. First, from someone, looking at this from the outside, one of the questions I have is like, why, and again, you already spoke to this to some degree, but like, why did this one not end in a 2-day or 3-day protest? Like, what about how it was organized, if anything, made it sustainable? Because these are the things that we want to learn from.
I think there's a lot of contingency that in terms of, like, for future planning, it's very difficult because of what Juanqui said. There are no specific leaders. Of course, we should not underestimate the effect of the ongoing protesting for years. Like, for example, one of the things that is being called for in some organizations is amnesty for all the protesters since the promesa since the junta began, because the memes are saying, you see, the pelus, the hairy communists were right. Like, everything that has been protested for was right. It was there in the chat. Now it was true. It was not just leftist paranoia.
Wow.
It was evident. So we cannot underestimate the effect. For example, to give you one example, the Colectiva Feminista had a plantón on December. A plantón was like, we're gonna sit here in front of Fortaleza, in front of the governor's mansion, and we're not gonna move until you declare a state of a gender emergency, of a gender violence emergency. And that started, even though it did not work in terms of beginning a dialogue with the government, it did got coverage in the news, and people started speaking about feminicide. There was a very, very horrible case of a teenager who lit his ex-girlfriend on fire. He poured gasoline on her, and so suddenly that became like a national topic. The same with the pensions. There was a lot of protesting with the debt audit movement, the movement to audit the debt. They have been doing very important and untiring work, and now that's part of people's vocabulary. So you cannot underestimate that bricklaying work. That is not to say that is the reason. I have no answer to why did this particular chat make protests unending for 2 weeks.
Okay.
We are all as amazed as you are. So we're living that history, but we're trying to understand it as you are.
But there are some things. I mean, one, that is, it might sound stupid, but it's the summer, okay? People are not in school. People are, youth, most people are working, but the youth are not in school. I say most people are working doesn't mean they have formal jobs. They in the informal economy and whatnot. Many people are now in different jobs or doing informal economy jobs, so that while you have to te tienes que ganar la vida, on the other hand, it's also more flexible, that you can use your time in ways that you might not be able in a formal job. También está el hecho de que, again, the news, I think the Center for el Centro de Periodismo Investigativo,
the Center for Investigative Journalism,
had a great, es un gran trabajo, because they not just put the whole chat and to the people, you know, to the different media outlets, but also started to write documents analyzing the chat.
Ah, qué
So,
bien.
on the next, o sea que every day you had different analysis from the Center for Investigative Reporting or Jay Fonseca, which is another figure that, while he's not a progressive or not a necessarily
It's not
radical intellectual or whatever, but it's a figure that many people listen in the radio, and he was also every day talking about the different contents of the chat. Also, some influencers were talking about the contents of the chat. So, from different sources, the social media, and again, lo divertido. Hay una cosa del gozo que realmente ha sido increíble. Y this was a very fun struggle. People were, I mean, las convocatorias. This is what I mean, that this was not planned by any, I mean, people were just literally inventing convocatorias. Mañana we're gonna be, bueno, el perreo militante. And people went. And
so organizing something was as easy as making a social media poster.
And that's it. And people were, okay, tomorrow we're gonna go to this. Mira, our biggest, the biggest ever manifestation, así como se dice, mobilization in Puerto Rico.
Sí.
Biggest mobilization in our history. Eso no lo organizó lo convocó una persona a lo loco, y eso corrió, y a la hora de la verdad.
Ya habían 6 posters hechos por distintas personas convocando para esa actividad.
Y no sabíamos ni la ruta, nadie sabía cómo carajo vamos a caminar aquí y allá, y eso fue un sal para afuera, pero funcionó. Entonces, entonces es muy interesante, pero tiene que ver mucho el gozo. O sea, la gente, pues mira, se fueron a hacer yoga a las 6 de la mañana frente
a la fortaleza.
Una convocatoria, y sabes que cientos de hombres y mujeres y niños haciendo yoga
para protestar.
para protestar. Se fueron a rogativas, que es una tradición, porque supuestamente hay una leyenda, ¿no?, que hubo en un ataque inglés que hubo en el siglo XVIII. Supuestamente es una leyenda realmente, pero bueno, que las familias, sobre todo las mujeres y los niños, salieron con antorchas, y los británicos y los ingleses salieron despavoridos. Pero realmente fueron los cimarrones que vivían en la costa que los sacaron para el carajo a machetazo, pero está bien, pero eso es otra historia. Lo que te quiero decir es que pues hicieron rogativas con antorchas y velones. O sea, había una creatividad inmensa.
And to give you an example of how something like outrageously offensive was turned into something positive. You know that in the chat they call Melissa Mark Viverito a whore. And suddenly there was a lot of women with puta written in their body, and who started going naked to the protest with the Puerto Rican flag painted on their and saying, and there was a convocatoria.
Una convocatoria.
A convening of strippers who said, we are strippers, we're whores, but we're not thieves. Somos putas, pero no corruptas. And they marched with their stripper clothes. So it was beautiful. It was, people were turning the what Juanqui has called the anti-chat. The chat was the negative intonation of all these offenses, and people turned it into the anti-chat. The positive reappropriation of all those things, and say, no, we're here, and this is the people, and fuck off, you do not represent us.
Y yo creo que that was pretty much reflected. I mean, the diversity of our bodies, the diversity of our sexualities and gender identities, the diversity of obviamente, our colors, of even ideological diversity, tú sabes. Esto era una cuestión, o sea, poder definir esto en términos cuál era la ideología dominante, pues es muy difícil, aunque sí estoy de acuerdo en que el anti-chat, podría uno decir, es decir, todo lo que el chat tenía, uno podría empezar a elaborar una plataforma de la gente a partir, curiosamente, del chat, pero obviamente en su contrario. Y ahí está, el odio a los pobres, pues carajo, políticas públicas que respeten y apoyen, ¿no? A los pobres en el sentido de que hagan de que ayuden a transformar la realidad, ¿no? Y no tener políticas que reproduzcan la pobreza. El odio a los gordos, porque literalmente había uno de los chats burlándose de una persona obesa. Gente obesa organizándose y marchando.
Han hecho camisas. Este gordito tú no lo coges de pendejo.
Este gordo, exacto, gordo no este no es el gordo que te perdonó. Algo así. O sea, entonces, esa creatividad yo creo que es parte de por qué esto pudo durar tanto. Y sí, es una incógnita que habrá que también seguir estudiando, como que dijimos ahorita, ¿no? We're still trying to understand. At the same time that we are involved in the everyday struggle, porque hay que participar, ¿no? You have to be there in order to, not just to understand, but also to have a political effect or whatever it is your role. You know?
What I have heard many times is, oh, you know, Puerto Rican politics is like defined by differing, yeah, exactly, the status question. What, I mean, it just didn't, from the outside, it seems like it didn't play a big role. Like it kind of proved people that thesis wrong. Is that accurate?
Oh no, that is totally accurate, and that is integral to our political work in JunteGente. I mean, and not just us. I mean, other organizations as well. Precisely, the status question has been the black hole of
radical politics.
Radical politics in Puerto Rico, in the sense that definitely the status question. Our colonial relationship with the United States, obviously, is crucial in our political context, no doubt about that, and it's crucial to recognize it and whatnot. But as you just said, this protest was not about the status question. This protest was a popular protest about precisely, actually. It was intersectional. It was about class. It was about gender. It was about race. It was about bodies. It was about class. So class definitely. And yes, you can say that there was a nationalist feeling, but not really nationalist. It's more definitely the people. Well, the Puerto Rican flag was the only flag, right?
Yeah.
And the Puerto Rican flag in the resistant colors, la negra y blanca, the Puerto Rican flags in its traditional colors, the LGBTQ flag, the rainbow flag, and the Puerto Rican star and whatnot. Pero, again, it was just the diversity of people and mete mano.
But it was not, it was I think it was not simply spontaneous, but it was a conscious. Was a conscious move towards that, because the first big manifestation on Monday the 9th, I think, no, 2 Mondays ago. Mm-hmm. 2 Mondays ago, there was a big like march from the Capitol to the governor's mansion, mm-hmm. And when it was convened or convocada. Uh-huh. By by Victoria Ciudadana, which is a new party that is a party for social justice, and
He's trying to break the status.
And has no official position on the status question. So it's trying to dissociate radical politics from the status question, because, as Juanqui says, there has been a collapse between the independence movement and leftist politics, as if they were the same thing, and they are not. There are very conservative people who are pro-independence. Mm-hmm. And we are, by doing that collapse, we cannot tap into radical people who are pro-statehood or who have other status ideology. So it is the black hole in terms of we cannot grow. The radical social justice movements cannot grow beyond the traditional nationalist left because of that collapse. So this party has been key in separating those aspects. But even though they were the convening voice in that manifestation, they did not bring any of their flags. They did not any politicking. And when I arrived, there was like 6 flags of the Independence Party. And my first reaction was, why do they do that? Why they did not convene in, this is a movement of the people. And they were heard, like a lot of people like me and like all of us, they protested. That was signaled out. And for the next manifestation, no one brought their flags. It was through social media, through all the WhatsApp chats, all the left llegaron al acuerdo that
reach the consensus.
They reached the consensus that it was not the time to bring out your organization flags. This was a march of the Puerto Rican people, and I think that was key in your question. And why did people keep coming and not say, "Oh, this is the same kind of people protesting"?
Okay. And what are they called? Victoria
Ciudadana. They're not actually, and they're beginning. They're not necessarily massive, but they in the last decade, there have been these different political
attempts
to go beyond the status question and organize around social justice
and beyond bipartidism.
Exactly, in order to break the bipartidismo, que es tripartidismo, and all the parties are defined by their status position with the United States. The problem with that was Bernat just told you.
People align just with the status question and forget about all the policies that work against.
Yeah. And actually, part of what we try to change is precisely to use the words that, for example, soberanía, right? Soberanía, the independence movement used the term soberanía, necesitamos la independencia, etc., soberanía. But what we try to say is, well, let's look at the multiple sovereignties, right? And let's look at soberanías del cuerpo. Let's look at food sovereignty. Let's look at energy sovereignty. And so that people, independientemente, if you want to have a relationship with the U.S. or not, can relate to food sovereignty. I wanna grow my own food. I want my community to be able to have food and not have to depend on a chain, or whatever. I want to, the feminist movement and I mean, the sovereignty of our bodies, etc. ¿No? Entonces,
the pro-abortion movement, based on a discourse on sovereignty of the body.
Entonces, ¿qué pasa? Que lo que está pasando ahora mismo is the people's sovereignty. Independientemente seamos colonia, no colonia, etc. Esto es que la manifestación de la soberanía popular es esto. Bajo los Estados Unidos, bajo quien sea, está ocurriendo. Entonces, un poco reconocer that we can we can make radical transformations and we can transform society even under the colonial circumstances in which we, because part of the discourse is, oh, first we have to gain independence and then we have to, and
people are tired of waiting for that order.
And that's why the feminist movement have been so strong also, obviously, together with the whole planetary feminist struggle that also brings ¿cómo es que se llama esto? Inspiración, ¿no?
The women in the pro-abortion movement in Argentina, the protest in Spain against La Manada, all that upsurge of international feminism has been key in waking that up here.
And that's another thing, you know, I mean, the youth have been crucial, and within the youth, la cantidad de mujeres al frente, tú sabes, al frente
Al frente not only with the megaphones, but confronting the police.
Sí, o
sea, there's one woman that they're calling La Reina, and she's with a cacerola. If she weighs 100 pounds, that's a lot. She's very thin and very small, and there's a lot of footage of her with the cacerola in front of a riot police, like 20 riot police, and some compañeros saying like, "Cool it down," and she was like, "Bang, bang."
Amazing.
It was amazing. Very, very, very amazing images and attitudes.
I think we are experiencing. We are seeing in front of our eyes the birth of new political subjectivities. I mean, I don't know we don't know how to name them yet, but it's happening, and the youth has a lot to do with it.
Okay. Bueno, entonces, bueno, primero por seguridad, o sea, voy a empezar un nuevo audio. Guardar solo por tener backups. Sí. Ok. Iniciar uno nuevo. Vale. Y voy a intentar hacer lo mismo con esto. La próxima pregunta, para que pensando mientras hago esto, es la de what do you consider to be the most significant elements of the nearly 900 pages of leaked documents? Porque ahorita mencionaron la de el futuro se ve bonito y es, bueno, Puerto Rico son puertorriqueños. So I think we've like heard a few, maybe there's like 5 that have made it into mainstream news, like one over and over and over again. I'm just wondering, like, including those, but which to you are the ones that maybe have gotten less visibility? What do you think were telling elements of? That's the next question.
We were discussing that earlier, that I think two in particular, like, sum up, and of course we have no way of knowing if these were the ones who mobilized, but the one that you just said, like, we foresee a beautiful future for Puerto Rico, is a Puerto Rico without Puerto Ricans. That one, and the one that says, cogemos de pendejo hasta los nuestros. We fool even our own.
There's another one that where the governor is making fun of poverty, of poor houses that were destroyed by the hurricane. So that is crucial, and I think one of the ones that really desbordó así la copa fue la burla de los muertos. One of them offered, don't we have some
cadavers we can throw to the vultures,
para los cuervos. Entonces eso, again, I think Bernat says it well. You're fucking with our dead ones. No? And now people really feel very, very, I mean, something that we obviously in our process and political work, we started to asking questions like to the people very much randomly. mira, ¿qué tú crees? ¿Por qué estás aquí? Etcétera. Y many people talk about how, well, you know, these people I have that family, our debts, they were making fun of our debt, and they use money for helping us during the hurricane that for themselves. You know, they use the money for the help. They canalize it for their means in order to make political campaigns. So, again, la dignidad yo creo que tiene que ver mucho también con el poder de esta batalla.
Look at this meme that appeared this morning. After tomorrow, it says like 4,645 dead. Rest in peace. It's like, okay, we did it. We
yeah.
Now you can rest in peace because we took this bastard out.
Porque eso está, acuérdate que, y claro, esto es una competencia de números, pero es increíble porque, remember, when Trump came to Puerto Rico, he said, the governor told Trump that we had only 16 people dead. Then, and then Trump said, oh, this is not a tragedy, you know, Katrina was a tragedy. Then came the Harvard study where that number comes from, 4,046, ¿no? 4,645. Then the government asked for a different study, and they wanted to, ¿sabes?, disminuirlo, y salieron con la mitad de ese número, 2,000 y pico. Al final, the Harvard study says...
The difference between 16 and...
Claro, son muchos. And the Harvard study said that they were being conservative. But the number that stayed was 46, 45. And you could see that number everywhere in the protests. People...
Really? Okay.
Yeah, people brought that and in graffitis and 45 everywhere, you know, and in many ways.
I don't know if it got international attention, but one of the most beautiful protests after Maria was that people started asking for people to bring shoes
of the dead ones
in front of the Capitol building, and in order to get 4,645 pairs of shoes, and to get the stories of the dead. And they started doing those interviews, and it was very powerful, and people felt that like it was the most beautiful symbolic political protest during the Maria crisis.
Wow.
Y entonces, ¿qué pasa? The government never officially did anything. They don't even recognize the amount of them. They don't even did a tribute or something.
A memorial
to the people.
Nothing. Nothing has been done.
Nothing. Así. Yeah, people are pissed.
And there's something that I'm mixing. Something I wanted to add. Maybe I'll remember.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, if you remember other things that came up in the leaked documents, you can just mention them and I'll add them to the section.
Something that's been very frequent is that when you interview people, they say, yeah, I got mad because of the chat, but it's not about the chat. So people have been very quick in doing the jump from being offended by puta to saying we have real problems. It's not that you call me poor, it's that I'm poor and there's a systematic misrepresentation and malversación de fondo, mismanagement of funds. There's a very telling photograph that everyone has seen, that it's a meme. They put two pictures together. One is during Maria in Humacao, one of the hardest, the towns that got hit the hardest by the hurricane. People sprayed on the street, we need water, we're dying of thirst, like help, so that helicopters could see the message and bring them water. And side by side, there was like thousands of boxes of bottled water that was brought here through the help of the diaspora and other international help, and they had it in an empty field. They never delivered them purposely so that people would go out and buy water. So I think everyone has seen that. Everyone knows.
Okay.
It's been transparent. I know that Baudrillard didn't mean this when he said the transparency of evil, but here, very literally, evil was transparent. It was, holy shit, these people care nothing about us.
Sí. Okay. Okay. Bueno, so the next question is, actually, I'm wondering if we should skip this one because we have covered it, but maybe there's just one more or a few things you want to add. It's, so what were the demands of the protests, and how did they coalesce, and what political openings did those demands create? And then there were questions more specifically around JunteGente. I don't know. Sorry, JunteGente. If there are any demands that JunteGente feels were left out that should have been added, or ones that they would have wanted to see added. And then personally, you, like, are there demands that you think would have been important to add?
So a few things. There are some demands that you that beyond Ricky renuncia, beyond Rosselló resign, that you already heard, like, people say, Ricky renuncia y llévate a la junta. Ricky resign and take the oversight committee with you. So people are already demanding that they know that there's a broader problem, that their power is not within our elected officials' hands. So not only are they corrupt, but we are living under an undemocratic and corrupt by design. I don't know if you know this, but the Promesa law, there are provisions where it says that the committee, the oversight committee members can be bribed, legally bribed. They can receive benefits for doing the different deals with different institutions. So it's legalized corruption. It's the peak of el descaro, ¿verdad? Es como el colmo del descaro.
Sí, el colmo del descaro.
So, but people are already saying or discussing, at least some groups, that if Ricky resigns and someone from his own party substitutes him, nothing really changes. Mm-hmm. So some of the changes that are being spoken and that we are JunteGente are in favor of are like voting, una reforma electoral, voting reform.
Electoral reform, sí.
Electoral reform. That could go in the direction of referendums recusatorios, referendums to kick someone out, that go in the direction of having 2 cycles of voting, so that there can be coalitions of minority parties. That there is
se gana 50 más 1, por ejemplo, hay que ganar por
that you have to win by a huge margin, or you have to go to a second ballot or second round, so that would enable minority parties to coalesce and then negotiate un gobierno compartido, that we can. So that's some of the terminology that's being used.
Proporcional también, for example, if the feminist, let's say a feminist party, just to give you an example, to saber, okay, and it takes 20% of the vote, but then you have to have 20% of representation.
That's a proportionality of.
Sí. Okay, wow, that's great to hear. And just to like get a sense of how much support there is for this, like, is this a popular demand that's being made, or
something that the organizations we have been meeting with all agree in some of these and most of these petitions, and that's the work that we have started already, and we have to keep doing. Today begins the hardest part of the organizing.
And that, exactly. Exactly.
So that's regarding elections. There are also demands regarding the audit of the debt and derogar la ley promesa, derogar in English. Well, eliminating the promesa law, eliminating the junta. So that's a key. That's very important. There are the gender issues, the declaring an emergency like a gender violence emergency in Puerto Rico. We have very, very high numbers, and there's a correlation between economic depression and gender violence because of the gender construction. If the man is constructed as being the breadwinner and there is no job, then you are no longer a man if you cannot maintain your so it's been studied that when such times come, the only way of expressing my manhood is through submitting through violence, submitting the other to my power. I don't have economic power, so that I have to. So that there's a huge problem in Puerto Rico. So there's we have to do labor reform. There's una reforma laboral that we want to derogate. Eliminate a reform law, a labor law that now enables enables the los patronos, the
employers,
that they can you can be their employee for 6 months, and that's counted as a trial period. During that trial period, they can use you for 6 months and then lay you off without any reason, and without any rights or fringe benefits, without any compensation. And that was one of the neoliberal laws in order to supposedly avivar la economía.
Revive, the economy.
But so one of the petitions that we think we should move towards is to regain job security, to strengthen unions. And the more radical groups are saying, and we also agree with this, even if it cannot happen, in fact, at least throwing the idea out there of starting popular assemblies, like Asambleas del Pueblo, because people now, this generation knows they have political power. That if they have mass, if we reach a critical mass, we can really turn government towards our attention. We can negotiate. We can. So people want to start popular assemblies in order to start thinking about, can we do a provisional popular government? Can we do a transition government? Because we want to stop. For example, it's not enough that he resigns. You have to stop every contract that has made the corrupt contracts that we already know that they're illegal. So not only that, we need to make those people pay to put them charges, to bring them up in criminal charges, and to restitute that money, to give that money back. All the money that they have stolen, part of the demands is that it has to be brought back to the al fisco, a la arca pública. It has to. So those are part of the mass. Do you want to add?
See, yeah, I will just say that this has been like we have experienced a democratization revolution, basically a democratization process. That because the mass, the amount, we're talking about maybe 1 million people express themselves in a territory that is now maybe less than 3 million. So imagine that. This is not proportionally amazing.
Yeah.
So how can we keep the democratization process growing?
Going, yeah.
That's where JunteGente wants to put its energy.
And You have to do that through direct democracy like the assemblies, but also make the representative democratic processes more democratic, right?
More transparent.
And for that, then we have to push for those reforms, electoral reform. So and also try to impose those non-reformist reforms that we, in order to be a more democratic society, because actually the crisis is also a crisis of democracy, right? You have a of very wealthy elite of criollos that really don't know shit about Puerto Ricans. I mean, Puerto Ricans as well, but they don't know anything about the people because they live in their own class bubble, and it's not democratic because they make their own decisions, and you know what happens. I mean, that's one thing. The other thing that we would like to include that hasn't been included at all anywhere, but we understand why, because the political situation perhaps don't allow us to look to that, is the whole climate, just the climate struggle, and that we need to bring, because obviously we know we have a planetary crisis, and in Puerto Rico, in the Caribbean, we are living that strongly now with the hurricanes, and we will continue to live this with droughts, with floods, with obviamente storms and more hurricanes. So that the whole idea of climate debt has to be brought to the struggle, and yes, that implies the relationship with the U.S. and all that. But how can we begin to look at different struggles that are happening in the metropole in the United States, like the Green New Deal, for example? How can we radicalize the idea of the Green New Deal in terms of how does that look from Puerto Rico, and how, if you're gonna have a Green New Deal and that is going to impact Puerto Rico, because I mean, if that win, I mean that will have an impact in Puerto Rico, then we will want to have a say in how that is translated into the so those two things, and obviously the continuous debate, relationship, and reflection with the diaspora. Because again, I mean, we have been exposed so much. We are 8.5, more or less. We are 8 million plus Puerto Ricans in the world. There are less than 3 in Puerto Rico. So imagine, I mean, this is. So how do we keep that reflection, conversation, etc.? And part of the reason for us being in Chicago was that, by the way, meeting with Rosana, meeting with the Puerto Rican community in that is in Chicago, and also obviously with other groups in the conference, in the socialist conference.
I want to add that some of the challenges for organizing is that the protests have been very. I want to that the demands have been simple, like Ricky resign or take the junta out, and then when you go into climate change and climate justice, that's a very complex discussion, and it's difficult in this context to get that into the discussion, because there's a complexity just in distinguishing between, okay, should Puerto Rico care about climate change? Like on the one hand, nothing Puerto Ricans do, even if Puerto Rico went green, like 100% green tomorrow, that would have no effect on greenhouse gases globally. So we would not be able to contribute in that sense. We do not sit at the table in any of the G8 meetings, of course. We don't have the international power in order to strike deals for green energy, for green production, etc. So to explain just that to the public and say, okay, what we are suffering from, climate justice, just the idea of climate justice, that we are suffering the effects of the consumption of the first world, of the decisions, the industrial, of the multinational companies, of the military complex. We are suffering from those decisions. So we should get our gears towards just transition, and to get people to start preparing for the next jobs that we're gonna have, to stop pushing for so much tourism when our coast will be flooded, and that's not a sustainable industry in the near future for Puerto Rico. That's a very complex conversation to have right now.
I just want to say
we face on that front.
Yeah. And let's just stay on this point for a while, because there was a question just specifically about climate justice. So, okay, you mentioned that if the United States is going to pass a Green New Deal, of course, any sort of leftist movement or progressive movement even involved in that process has to take into consideration specifically like Puerto Rico. I know a lot of these conversations you're just starting to plan large conferences around them, and we'll talk about that in a second, but what do you think would be some of the demands from Puerto Rico for a Green New Deal? Like, what should, for example, an organization like Science for the People be pushing for and supporting for a Green New Deal regarding Puerto Rico?
Mira, at this moment, there is, okay, JunteGente, we have different committees, right? And right now,
JunteGente or okay.
Like gathering of the people.
Right. Hay un junte de la gente.
When we say, vamos a hacer un junte, let's get together. Like, vamos a hacer un junte y nos encontramos en tal sitio. What we mean is, let's do a gathering.
Right.
Okay.
So we have different groups and committees, right? There's one right now that is precisely organizing un encuentro, an event, and a big gathering around climate change and the whole political dimension of climate change, and how we want to get organized around those issues. But we don't, and it is in those encounters, en esos encuentros, donde listening to the different organizations that are already involved around issues of climate change, from farmers to scientists, ecological movements to fisher folks that are organized, etc. So we gather that information, we have a reflection, and it is from that then JunteGente tries to elaborate a sort of like platform on this. So, yo no me siento cómodo ahora diciéndote, mira, esto es lo que nosotros quisiéramos decir, porque todavía no hemos tenido ese encuentro.
Okay.
Obviamente uno podría decir puntos generales, pero como todo el mundo, ¿no? Pero tampoco soy, esa no es una de mis expertise, vamos.
And also methodologically and politically, what we do is we gather the people who are actually the community organizations who are actually do that sort of work, agroecological work, ambientalista, environmentalists, etc. And then ask them or have a convening in order to set the agenda.
Okay. Pero sí, o sea, cosas generales, just transition, climate debt, the whole idea of debt. I mean, we have a debt crisis, right? Well, we as the whole colonial process and the transformation of Puerto Rico has been imposed by a U.S. focused development. Our ecological issues has also to do with that. So if you have all of a sudden the transformation of a multi agricultural island archipelago transform into a monocultivo de azúcar, right? But you have an ecological devastation. If you have then the imposition of the suburbanization and urbanization model of the U.S., where the car is the main mode of transportation, and you transform the island archipelago into, I mean, we have one of the biggest concentrations of roads in the planet, carretera, and a huge concentration of vehicles, motor vehicles.
Huh.
And so a lot of the urban sprawl here in Puerto Rico is just insane.
Yeah.
So all these are U.S. models, and obviously todo ese proceso del Fordismo y post-Fordismo, etc. So all that has transformed our paisaje, how you say?
Landscape.
Yeah. So yes, I mean, there is an ecological or climate depth that we have to talk when we talk also about the relationship of Puerto Rico and the U.S. And that has to be presented. So, I mean, all the type of things, but obviously those are pretty general stuff.
Okay. Yeah, and that's great.
The role of the military also in the ecological transformation of Puerto Rico, like in Vieques, using
Vieques, yeah.
Pero bueno, eso no sé.
Okay. Is there, on the point of militarization, like, just like briefly, like what points do you think are the most important to highlight? So
yeah,
the battle in Vieques, but I don't know, is it worth also highlighting that like the response to Maria was both kind of militarized and useless, and that those two things are related?
Yeah.
I don't know, totally. But again, I mean, FEMA has been militarized. FEMA has been militarized. It's under national security, and the whole. I mean, FEMA is really a militarized. It's like an invasion army. You know, it's not really a humanitarian. That changed with the whole laws under Reagan. It already began to change. Under Bush, I mean, it was crazy. So yes, I mean, it was really a military intervention. This was full of military folks during the hurricane. I mean, after the hurricane, and it seemed more like they were checking out that we did not riot than really bringing food or helping anyone.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's what actually what it was, because eventually they left. When they realized these people are not going to riot now. So they left, because at the end, the people who really help, and I think that's very important actually for today, were Puerto Ricans and the solidarity of international groups all over the world. And it was mobilized with the diaspora, and the communities were organized. So really, it was a very... ¿cómo se diría? It wasn't the state, and it wasn't the federal government either. So it was the people with solidarity, obviously, world solidarity, but it was the people who really canalized and the help. And I mean, the help that got into people's hands and bellies, and it was through NGOs that of Puerto Ricans, or progressive NGOs, not all NGOs, or groups that were just organized in order to bring help, or, tú sabes, artists, some artists, por ahí va la cosa. Así que,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And then just the last point on climate justice, you're organizing a conference.
Yeah.
Sí, sí.
Tell us a little bit about it and why people should attend.
Claro, claro. Well, I think now more than ever, people should look at us and attend of what we're. I mean, mira. Okay, let's go to your question first. Why people should attend and why we're organizing? Well, again, we're trying to bring all the groups. This is social movements, community organizations, and people that deal with public policies or scientists. I mean, different gremios to come together and reflect on our planetary crisis, but also the situation in Puerto Rico, both in terms of political ecology, you know, I say bringing the political dimension to our ecological reality. What will come from that, we don't know, but obviously we want to produce a progressive and hopefully more radical movement that takes seriously our climate reality. No? There are two members that are organizing that. They are not here in this interview, but hopefully that will be a 2-day event.
Okay.
And they hopefully also some people from probably Dominican Republic will come, so we will have hopefully representation, a regional representation of the Caribbean, and hopefully we can bring also an international figure that has been involved in this type of discussions. We don't know yet who, pero we try to combine all those aspects in order to have more broad our message to become broader. Eso sería.
Sí, brother, sí.
Brother, sí. Eso por un lado. Y bueno, y yo sí creo, we think that we are in a different country. I mean, this, as Lenin said, there are weeks where
decades where nothing happens.
There are decades where nothing happens and weeks where decades occur, right? So these 2 weeks have been decades and decades and decades of happenings, and we are in a different country. And I think that this event will also be an important event after this political juncture. So we are in a political juncture that is really deep, and hopefully we will be able to make it more progressive, radical, democratic, etc. So we want to make advantage of the fact that perhaps we can inspire other people to rise up and think and reflect and move, and hopefully in the US as well, because I mean these chats are very racist, misogynist, etc. And Trump is one of the embodiments of. He's like an embodied chat, you know. So we need.
He's a walking chat.
He's a walking chat. So I think people in the States can also rise up and get inspired with the colony down here. You know?
No, I got chills when you started talking about las asambleas populares y el estado de emergencia de violencia de género. Like that would just be so meaningful for. I mean, I would love for Colombia to take up both of those, you know, be inspired by both of those demands, all of them, pero.
No, claro.
Entonces, la conferencia tiene una página web, ¿cierto? I can link to it. ¿O todavía no?
I don't know. At this moment, no. Okay.
I was trying to look for. We have like a blueprint for the activity, and I haven't found it. And that was why I was looking in in my phone.
Okay. Yeah.
But
If you find it, then I can link to it in the. Okay.
And everything has paused. I mean, because we had a lot of work coming from the conference. We were like, oh my
we're very
God,
pumped of everything we were gonna do.
We have to do so many things, but everyone hasn't done shit. Everyone has been protesting.
Yeah. Full-time revolutionaries. Okay.
And the meeting started really fast among certain organizations. To what are we gonna do, and so we've been like organizing in another direction. Not everything that we brought from the conference that we're gonna have to catch up to in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm looking at the questions, and we've actually covered a lot of them. I think we talked about the feminist movement, and the demand for a state of emergency against gender violence. Mm-hmm. We talked, let's see if, I think we covered the deadly neglect question, although I don't know if you want to add anything to that one. It's, so I'll read it. A recent NACLA piece argued that these protests are quite literally about life and death, as you have mentioned. And I quote the article, "The rhetoric and attitudes of the governor and his closest allies captured in the chat are ones that promote harm and death in immoral ways, from the outright incitement of violence to the promotion of a neoliberal politics of deadly neglect." Entonces, ¿qué significa deadly neglect en el contexto de neoliberal politics? Pero creo que ya tocamos muchos de esos. No sé si quieran agregar algo.
I would to add that what I find most striking, and that I think was also a catalytic factor in people showing up, was the blatant, not only the blatant disregard for life, for Puerto Rican life, and for the Puerto Rican well-being, but the actual ineptitude for governance, the actual neglect of governance. They do not seem to be an administration that has neither the capacity nor the inclination nor the vocation of governance. It makes you, and I say this very cautiously, it makes you yearn for like decent right-wing people, like
oh shit.
You know what I'm saying is that people that want to govern, obviously in a direction that I'm not in agreement with, but at least you know that there are some conservatives who have an aptitude for governance, that have a different view of what society should be, not that I do not agree with, but at least it's a political debate. This is like blatant egoistic greed. It's so I would stress in that deadly neglect that they took upon cargos públicos, they took upon a job, a task that they were not up to the challenge of. So that's for me the worst part of it, is knowing. But again, it's very hopeful for me. One of the posts that I put out in Instagram was, at least if we learn something from the chat, is that anyone can govern, because the bar has been set so low. Then the communist idea of okay, anyone can govern, we can govern ourselves, because if these were the people who were supposedly the expert on governance, then we know that we can do it, that anyone can do it. That you could someone at random and say, okay, what do you think should be the north, or the direction in which we should administer the Puerto Rican well-being for the most people? I think anyone would do a better job than this.
Better job, yeah.
So neoliberalism breeds, I mean, corruption is inherent in neoliberal policies and in the system. And I think that, I mean, the whole idea of being a public servant, that I mean, when you have aggressive neoliberal, I mean, hyper neoliberal policies and attitudes, really, all that is, I mean, the government cannot govern anymore. I mean, I think the government is an institution, has become in Puerto Rico at least an institution to hire, I mean, to contract people to do services, right? But then obviously in the logic of the contracts, the logic that is gonna be the main idea is to acumular riqueza, no, producir riqueza, to be profitable. So these people are not thinking anymore as governor in terms of serving the people. I mean, these are people thinking as CEOs of a group, not even of a company. I mean, of how can we get rich? I mean, so it's about becoming wealthy, how you can distribute those contracts to the people that are around you, and that's it. And I honestly think that the system breeds that corruption.
Yeah.
And obviously, these are individuals that are very much that grew up in that culture and are very much capitalist, neoliberal, etc. And they are in a very they come con una casta criolla, you know, with wealthy families in Puerto Rico and whatnot. But also, I think is part of the logic of the system. And on top of that, you have a colonial also framework that brings even more corruption to the whole process. So it's a competition among who gets the money, los gringos o los criollos. Y si pueden colaborar, pues bien. Y no, pues aquellos se molestan porque estos empezaron a robar más de la cuenta, tú sabes. Pero
anyway. But it's something that Juanqui has stressed and brought up in many of our meetings is that precisely the neoliberal logic has deteriorated or almost made extinct a class of public servant experts. So the career worker, the career public servant who knew the nooks and crannies of how things got done, and suddenly we don't have that in our utilities. We don't have that for social services. We don't have that for maybe for social services we still do,
right?
But we don't have that for the electric utilities, etc. So that puts the government, whatever administration, in a position of hiring those experts who do not have public service as their goal, but just profit.
Yeah, they have their company. So I got a contract with the government. Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
So now I'm gonna, si yo cobraba 20 pesos la hora, now I'm gonna charge you 500. Fuck it. And since you don't care, I mean, you're my pal, you're my connection, well, I'm gonna give you 500. And of those 500, I'm gonna take 20%.
Yeah.
And, you know, and it becomes a corruption scheme en todos los niveles.
Okay. Man, I feel like you guys are just like this treasure chest of reflections and analysis. I just want to be respectful of your time. You must be exhausted. So I'm looking also through the questions and wondering, acá podemos hacer una pausa. O sea, ya es una pregunta sincera, como, en serio no les quiero quitar mucho más tiempo, pero estoy viendo las preguntas y estoy pues, o sea, ¿cuáles creen que deberíamos tocar antes de que los deje ir?
Había una de que puede ser no creo como Star Wars de la comunidad internacional.
Sí, esa, sí, de acuerdo, esa tiene que ir, porque pues yo creo que la gente va a leer esto queriendo saber, bueno, ¿qué hacemos? Entonces, esa va, ok. Hay otra, o sea, lo recuerdo, hay otra sobre el Puerto Rican Summer y si hay una comparación con el Arab Spring, y bueno, acá, sí.
Sí.
Do you agree with the assessment that implies for long-term regime change en Puerto Rico? O sea, esa es la pregunta. Hay otra que creo que más o menos ya tocaron, que es la de will there be any consequence of the protest movement to the status of Puerto Rico as a colony in the U.S.? Había esa. Había bueno, la de cambio climático ya. A ver, qué pena. Bueno, entonces teníamos la que who should replace Rosselló, ideally.
Well, ideally will be the people, meaning. I mean, what we want, what one of the things we bring to the table is that it cannot be the same people that are in power at this moment to say, oh, now Rosselló is not the government, now it's going to be this person. So we're calling for immediate elections, right? But the thing is, those elections cannot be, they have to be extraordinary elections, meaning that they cannot be elections with the same electoral system. They have to be reformed with the different changes that we suggested you a couple of minutes ago, right? Elections that where you can have alliances within different groups, that is easier to have independent candidates, where you have a more proportionate representation of the people, when you have dos rondas, if in the first round was
no one gets 51%.
More than 50%, and more democratic elections. That's what we need.
Okay.
Obviously, it's very difficult to make it happen, but we will try. Okay. That's one of the things we want to bring. We are bringing to the table. Yeah. And we meeting different groups, not just JunteGente. Again, JunteGente is we try to bring people together and help in that process of.
For example, it would be very interesting if the different sectors that have been protesting could sit on the table and, for example, with Victoria Ciudadana and actually negotiate. Okay, we're gonna back you up, right. And I say Victoria Ciudadana because the independence movement, the party, Independence Party, not the movement, the Independence Party, really is a non-player. And then you have the PNP and the PPD, the for statehood and for Commonwealth parties, which have been the problem. They were the ones who racked up the debt, the illegal debt, and the etc. So they cannot be. So right now, the only visible choice would be Victoria Ciudadana, but it's not an issue of saying, okay, let's see what you do. No, I think we should mobilize the power of the people that we have seen through the manifestations. We should. That was the idea behind assemblies also, that you have enough feedback from what people want in order to sit down and negotiate, for example, with Victoria Ciudadana and say, okay, we'll back you up, but this is what we want. You gotta assure that you're gonna do an electoral reform. You have to give us assurance about labor laws. You have to give us assurance about housing, about gender issues, about the. So I think we are there, and I would like to tell you that we're very organized and this is set and this is gonna happen. No, but that's not true. That's.
Mis niños están peleando. Yo no sé si tú escuchas eso. Los gritos. ¿No?
Okay, this is a timeout for.
Pausa. No.
Okay, so that's what I would say. I think in the most actionable scenario I see right now, because of the way things are set, would be trying to channel all that energy into not into joining a party, but into negotiating with a party who would have the possibility of gaining the support of the people who have been manifesting.
Okay. And so throughout the course of the interview, you've been saying, like, we have been having meetings, we discussed this. Who's we here? Is it JunteGente or?
Jornada no más promesa.
Jornada se acabaron las promesas.
Jornada se acabaron las promesas. Which you might see, they usually carry the shields.
I've heard of them, yeah.
They're sort of our black bloc in Puerto Rico.
Exacto.
With Colectiva Feminista, with the CAMS, which are the
Colectivo de apoyo mutuo.
Colectivo de apoyo
Ah,
mutuo.
sí, claro. Sí.
So, and that's a huge organization because there's
Centros de
not
apoyo mutuo.
centros de apoyo mutuo. There's not one, but a lot, and they're not centralized. So they came different representations.
I think you know some of them.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, I remember them.
People from the Independence Party also came to the bigger meeting.
Mm-hmm.
People from Idebajo. I don't know if you know Idebajo,
It's a regional
community organizing around ecological issues and energy issues.
¿Y debajo?
Idebajo.
Very important in the south.
Yeah. And we could, when you come back, Science for the People, we're going to get you in contact with them.
Yeah, please.
They're organizing around the ashes, the ashes that are the byproduct of.
Sí, sí, sí.
Okay. So if you've heard of, they're one of the main organizers against the dumping of the ashes in the alley.
Okay.
So they had representatives. Who else?
Were unions there?
Huayquia, the agroecological lobbying other group were there. So those
that's
are.
So Science for the People. That's where we stayed. We stayed on their farm in Guaqui.
Okay. So that's the people we've been meeting. So people we already have connections to. We have relations with the people for the audit of the debt. El Frente para la Auditoría de la Deuda.
Yeah. We meet many people. We with Federación de Maestros. We also Ramos, which is a different group of maestros y maestras.
There were people from Lautier.
Casa Pueblo, Sindicato.
Casa Pueblo. Yeah, I wanted to ask about the unions. Utier has been there.
Yeah. In the struggle?
In the struggle.
And in the meetings after.
Perdóname?
They have been, some members have been in the meetings.
Yes.
But as Juanqui was saying, they haven't had a huge presence as an organized group, but they have done a lot of infrastructure work for organizing for the protests, providing sound, providing places for meetings, providing scaffolding for the concerts or etc. So they have been there for security also, etc.
Yeah.
Okay. Other than Maestros and Utier, are there other unions?
Something that would have been beautiful. It was beautiful and interesting, but it was supposed to happen on Monday. Is that the union of truckers?
Oh yeah.
They did something beautiful. Instead of simply going on strike, they put out a public statement saying, "We are going to have a meeting to propose a strike, but we want to know that the Puerto Rican public are ready to withstand the effects, the consequences of our striking. Because if we strike, then there's not going to be gas in the stations, there's not going to be food in the stores, there's not going to be medicine in the pharmacies."
So they were
So they did a democratic, a social media referendum.
Yeah.
And people were saying, "Yeah, of course, let's do it. We're ready." And that was, for me, that was one of the most beautiful episodes.
Wow.
It was participative democracy live.
So people exactamente votando de ustedes mandan. Si ustedes están de acuerdo, lo vamos a hacer.
Increíble.
Pero no vamos a parar hasta que se vaya. Así que pueden ser días.
So that could happen.
Wow, they were ready.
Yeah, they were ready to put full on pressure.
Yeah.
Okay, that's beautiful.
Yeah, said,
So that was the truckers union, or that was just like multiple?
Let me check the name of
the truckers union.
Okay, that's beautiful. Okay, so we did trade. We did the role of trade unions. Great. We did climate justice.
Also to acknowledge the role of militant lawyers.
El Colegio de los Abogados.
Sí, porque es que hay muchos abogados y abogadas que son militantes y muy de izquierda y muy defensores de derechos humanos y que han estado presentes 24/7 ahí en las manifestaciones velando que no haya brutalidad policíaca, que no haya represión, etcétera, y que obviamente la ha habido, pero han estado ahí y han estado presentes, ¿no? Y tanto mujeres como hombres muy presentes ahí.
Qué bien.
Sí, sí.
¿El sindicato de médicos o profesionales médicos?
Bueno, at this point, I mean, yesterday everyone was, even the most conservative pro-capitalist organizations were already like Ricky Renuncia, you know, because actually we're affecting them as well.
Ah.
One of the most companies that own the biggest malls, shopping malls in Puerto Rico, which are part of the political party of the governor. Yesterday, they say, you know, you have to step out.
Yeah.
They were closed today because today's manifestation, and they were closed the other day as well. And those are millions of dollars that they lose, you know, whatever. But you know what I mean. So the economic pressure was there as well. So even conservative groups were already pushing for his.
There was a police union who called out for the resignation. The police. And there was an announcement of a police manifestation, not calling out for the second one, not calling out for the resignation, but to express their support of the people, etc. Yeah. So there was an opening for very interesting things. If we would have gotten the police on our side, that would have been priceless. But there's still a lot to do, so that might happen.
Wow. Okay.
I wanted to answer the one about the Arab Spring.
Oh, okay.
I have no problem with the analogy in terms
Bernat,
of.
Voy a pausarlo otra vez, es que me da pánico perder los audios, y ya te digo.
Muchachos, nunca grabó. ¿Podemos empezar nuevamente?
Pregunta número 1. Vale, ya, ahorita ya estamos otra vez grabando.
Dale.
Okay, ya.
Dale, ya.
I have no. I'm not only are we honored as a country by the analogy, because obviously Tahrir Square and all that happened in the Arab Spring was inspiring to us, but that was the first thing that got into our minds. As soon as the protest started saying Ricky renuncia, we said, okay, what happened after Mubarak? Nothing.
Wow.
So that was very present in people's minds, like, wow. They got Mubarak out, but then the military and then the Muslim Brotherhood got the better part of the political momentum. Mm-hmm. And there was no real or radical regime change. And if you go to Spain and you go to the Occupy movement, what they have in common is that we have been very since the Arab Spring very good in appearing in masses, what Negri and Hart call the multitude. Mm-hmm. The multitude appears and is there, but then there's a problem of organizing after the fact, after the protest, mm-hmm. of long-term organizing and of being ready for the next step of radicalizing, for the next step of political organizing, in the direction of social justice and true democracy, true participative democracy. So this is what we're going to see from today on. If we're going to stay at that level of the Arab Spring, or are we going to be the beginning of the next level of what we think should be the next step in the international people's struggles?
Okay, great.
And then there was another question regarding what international communities could.
Let me just read it. So
go for it.
Do you have any advice to US-based organizations like Science for the People who stand in solidarity with the Puerto Rican protests and struggle on how to best support the efforts? Porque era to remove the current governor, pero ya, check.
Qué chévere. That's great. You don't have to include that. That's great. Mira, yo creo que eso también es importante to recognize the victories because I mean, we understand we have to be cautious and this is not a revolution in the sense of a radical transformation of the system, but it is a revolution in terms of the people changing at least their ways of recognizing their power.
The political zeitgeist has changed.
Their power, you know, and that is very important. For me, the thing of solidarity is crucial for us and for everyone. I mean, this is the beautiful, also the beauty of struggles is that it has solidarity with other peoples and movements and whatnot. Is to maintain the presence of Puerto Rico in the reflections and the reflections that you have, both in terms of politics and everything, you know, make gracias. Se me olvidó hablar. La importancia de mantener nuestra presencia, ¿no? en las discusiones. And the other thing, I think that one of the best way to be effective in solidarity is to also to get inspired in the sense of struggling against your own oppressions and your own if it's in the US, against ICE, against Trump, against xenophobia and misogyny and racism, and you know, if it's in depending on where you are, you know, so join the struggles there and let's keep seeing the connections between Puerto Rico and those struggles. So two things: keep us alive in your conversations.
Okay.
The other is get inspired and struggle against your oppressors as well, which are our oppressors as well.
And I would not hesitate to call this an international movement in the sense that it's not by accident that you mentioned the Arab Spring.
Claro.
There has been, like, for example, the feminist movement. I mentioned that we were inspired by Argentina and by Spain.
Exactly.
And so we are in an international movement. We need to solidify those bonds. And this is internationalism at work. We have to own that. We have to believe that it is an international movement. That we are not just, these are not just separate accidental struggles. This is a global fight against neoliberalism, against capitalism, and against the forces that deny climate change and deny that we need to mobilize now in order to save the habitability of our planet.
And yes, okay, so Bernat, I think is crucial. I mean, yes, there is a context and a political context, a colonial context and whatnot, but this is also a global struggle for radical democracy. Should also be that way. And again, that's why we can talk about the Arab Spring, well, the Puerto Rican Spring, or which is the summer, with the Caribbean taste and whatnot. But I think this is a struggle for radical democracy, and it should be everywhere, you know, because otherwise then they will keep winning, and not even the dead will be safe.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, I think that's a really good point to end on. The only topic that we didn't touch that you highlighted was about the right wing, like that some lawmakers are now calling for even greater oversight.
Yes,
that's very important.
How has the right wing been responding to the protests? How do you think they're going to respond to Residuo's resignation? And I think the last one, and I'll make sure that the interview actually ends on the international question, but this is like,
I would say first, as a context, something that's very peculiar about this, as opposed to, for example, the fight with Vieques. Some people have called the chat the David Sanes of this fight. David Sanes was an officer of the U.S. Marine, a Puerto Rican officer of the U.S. Navy that was killed in one of the
military police. Actually,
he was a military police that was killed in one of the bombing practices in Vieques, and his death was the catalyzing agent for that struggle. And people are calling this chat the David Sanes of the catalyzing agent.
Okay.
But the peculiarity, like as soon as that happened, then the organized left led the struggle and organized a very eclectic is not the word, cuando se une todo el mundo, es el término religioso, cuando hay todas las denominaciones.
Ecumenical.
It was a very ecumenical movement, but it was mainly organized by the left. In this case, you have that what started this was FBI intervention. The FBI arrested Julia Kelleher, the Secretary of Education. So the FBI. So we have to be cautious that it was the catalytic agents were from the right or from the colonial powers. So on the one side we have the arrest done by the FBI, and on the other hand you have the leak of the chat came from inside the state, the pro-statehood party. So that was an internal political fight that got blown out of proportions. I'm sure they did not intend this to happen the way it did, because right now their party is crumbling.
Right.
So they right now I'm sure they're lamenting having put that chat out. But the thing is that those were two things that give the context of this struggle. Now that we have the struggle, how is the right going to react? The sad part is that they do not have to mobilize that much in order for their agenda to work, because if Wanda, what's her name, Vasquez, if Wanda Vasquez is the one who's gonna replace Ricky as the new governor, the interim government of Wanda Vasquez already has been singled out for having done illegal contracts, etc. So they already put in place another corrupt figure. So she won't last that much. So the thing that the sad part is that the right does not have to do that much in order to gain control of the political opening. So that's why we have to continue fighting and struggling.
For the right in the United States, this plays very, very well. A part of our challenge is precisely to show, to bring forward that, again, Trump and Ricardo Rosselló are the same in terms of precisely, in the sense of el odio al pobre, el odio a la mujer, el odio a los negros y a las minorías de todo tipo, el odio a los inmigrantes, etcétera, etcétera, etcétera. So we need to actually, and that's part of the struggle, how can we demonstrate and try to unite, like Ricky renuncia, Trump renuncia. Why? Because again, Trump is like an embodied chat in terms of all his hateful comments and whatnot. Entonces, yo creo the right will want to, one part of the right will want more of the junta, so more neoliberal IMF type of policies come and are established in Puerto Rico, and some groups will benefit from that, from local groups, will benefit from that. Class is class groups. Pero hay otros that don't want that, because also they want to have their own sphere of autonomy in order to deal with some of the money. How we try to move the discussion towards precisely more democracy, more social justice, democracy, and whatnot, that's obviously part of the Esa es la gran tarea que tenemos.
Sí.
Así que,
Bueno.
the good part is that we have the momentum in the sense of the people have power. This is democracy in practice. This is sovereignty in practice. This is decolonization in practice, because, I mean, at the end, also colonialism is about not, identifying yourself as a human being capable of transforming the world, right? So if you're a colonial subject, you think that the other is better than you and you cannot change the world, etc. But here, we as a people stop, and not just, we topple a fucking governor, So, hey, we can do this with the rest, and we can do this for our own interest in terms of, for the majorities.
So self-determination.
And that is self-determination,
Yeah.
So, pero claro, es un reto.
Un reto.
Let's see how we...
Dicen, ahorita les empieza la tarea así.
Exactamente.
Nada difícil, sí. Bueno, Juanqui, Bernat, no sé cómo agradecerles esto. Yo, me encantaría que sacáramos esto hoy mismo, entonces yo voy a empezar a transcribir de una y voy a pasarle, son 2 y pico horas de audio, entonces se las voy a pasar también a los compas para que me ayuden. Y les quería pedir, mencionaron la creatividad varias veces, mencionaron los memes, no sé si me puedan enviar como...
Dale cosas chéveres, okay.
Algunos, no sé, 3, 4 o todos los que quieran para incluir en el artículo, porque es que esa es una parte muy importante, subestimar los memes es un error, creo.
Sí, definitivo.
O sea, ahí se consolida el momento en un humor, ¿no? Es que son...
Claro. Y la cantidad de canciones, yo creo que ya se puede sacar un disco de las canciones
que los artistas
crean.
Entonces, lo mismo, por favor, canciones, para... Ustedes ya se han dado cuenta, bueno, no sé, nunca puede haber suficiente creatividad. No voy a decir que en Estados Unidos no hay suficiente, pero sí que siempre se puede inspirar por más creatividad, por el goce, como decían ustedes. Entonces, eso es lo que les quería pedir. Y ¿saben si hay como una cartilla o algo que tenga todos los puntos de la reforma electoral?
Hay cosas, pero...
¿Están dispersos?
Tratamos de encontrarte
sí, pero okay. Tratamos de...
Listo.
Porque yo tengo uno de los documentos que trabajamos en una de las reuniones, a mí fue el que me tocó redactarlo, pues ese te lo puedo mandar.
Okay.
No es de la reforma electoral, es el de otros 5 puntos que acordamos.
Sí,
okay.
Pero podemos enviarte algo.
Bueno, no, me dieron 2 horas y media. Gracias a ustedes, de verdad.